Hi, and welcome back to Middle City's Homestead. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to do tile and show you all the tips and tricks that I've picked up over the course of the year that have made all my jobs successful for me, and hopefully they'll be successful to you. So do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so that I'll keep being encouraged to keep doing these videos for you. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so I just want to kind of go over all of the different things that I've been using and doing the tile that you see behind me so that you have an idea. And this is how I want to start the video out, is kind of show you what you're going to need. And I'll put a list of all of these items in the description down below. Some of them you're going to get online, some of them you're going to get them at a big box store, some of them you may already have. So obviously let's start with clearly you need tile, right? You're going to need to know what you're going to lay down and what you're going to go with. I'm going with these hexagon tiles across the floor. And then after you do the tile, you're going to need the adhesive to put down on the floor, which is this kind of bucket stuff here. Now I go with the pre-mixed stuff. I don't like messing with the bags myself personally, but the bag stuff is way cheaper. So if you're looking, to save some money or whatever, I mean, I think a box of this or a bucket of this is maybe 70 bucks. This stuff is way more expensive, but it's so much easier. It's already pre-mixed. It comes out like creamy peanut butter, and it's really easy to spread, and you don't have to worry about the mess and the dust. You just kind of go at it. With that being said, you obviously then need some tools. Here's your general scraper with the different grooves on it, and you're going to want to buy the one, depending on what type of tile you use, with the appropriate tool. And they make these in these grooves really fine, and they make them much larger than this, right? And then you obviously want to read your material and your tile. It's going to depend upon what you do. When you put down your tile too, then you're going to need some form of spacer. You're going to need to decide, hey, these are 1/8 inch. They make 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. And that's how thick your grout lines are going to be. And you'll see in all of these behind me, I put the little spacers in between every single tile on every side, and you push them up next to each other. That way you get a consistent look across the board. Now, as you're laying your tiles, obviously you're going to need some mechanism for measuring. So a tape measure. I always use a metal straight rule, and clearly a bucket of pencils, because they always will break on you. I do use a screwdriver. A nice flathead big screwdriver is really handy for when you're working things. You can kind of put it in between the groove, and you can just kind of twist it, and that will cause the tile to spread apart. Because once you put these tiles on the ground, they do stick, and they stick very well. And sometimes they're a little tough to move around, and you can put this in between that groove, and you can kind of twist it, and that will push it a little bit and maybe tighten it up a little better, make your lines look a little nicer. I would absolutely suggest a wet sponge and a wet rag for wiping things up as you go, a garbage can to throw things away. I do got a bucket of water back here and a scrub brush for cleaning my tools. As you do this, you may not finish it all in one day. My knees give out at some point, and I have to kind of spread it across multiple days. But my tools, I kind of clean them up every so often, because that mortar will definitely start to set up on your tools, and then you're working with a messy tool, and that just doesn't work. Obviously some good knee pads, especially if you're dealing with knees like me. And I will tell you, the one thing that I absolutely would buy is some type of a laser level of some sort. You cannot go wrong with a good laser level, and it will make your job look way better, and it's much easier than, let's say, drawing lines on the ground. But the way you use it is you would kind of pick your points, measure maybe off this one wall or go down the center, and you put your laser level down that line, and then work from that line, right, to make sure that you're always hitting. Because inadvertently you travel 10 feet or whatever it is like this in this room, and you're going to get off, right? Your tiles are going to not line up correctly, and you're going to need to do something. So the laser level comes very handy, and it's especially really handy if you're laying tiles vertically up a wall. If you want those horizontal lines to always kind of be at the same, a tripod and a laser level is the only way to go, to be honest with you. Used it on every tile or backsplash job that I've ever done, and they turn out fabulous. So and again, not a tile guy, but laser level is the way to go. I'll put a link to a really good laser level. This is a DeWalt. It runs in like the $200+ range. I have another one that I bought back in 2019. It's been lasting all along. The battery doesn't hold anymore, but I can plug it in and work it. It's like about 150, 170 bucks. And it's a great laser level. So I'll put those in the description below. I've used that on many jobs if you've seen some of my other time-lapse videos. The other thing I would absolutely buy tool-wise is a vibrating saw or oscillating saw. This one is very old. I think this is a Chicago Electric. I might have gotten it out of Harbor Freight or something like that. This thing has more miles on it than I do. It has seen more jobs than I can even count. But this is absolutely just gonna make your life easy for like cutting under baseboards, or the frame around the door, or just trimming things up, or even cleaning up like the glue or gunk off the floor. This is worth its weight in gold. I would absolutely buy this. The other thing you're going to need is possibly a tile cutter, whether in the form of a manual one or in a electric saw. And I'm going to show you the two that I have. I've used both. I'll be honest, I only use the wet saw now for pretty much all my jobs. Not to say I wouldn't go back to the tile cutter, but I'll show you both here real quick. So I'll cut to that, I'll set them up, and I'll give you a real quick demonstration, because those are going to be key to pulling out this job. Obviously a shop vac and some extension cords, and you know, maybe a good helper, back brace, a whole bunch of other things. So let's go look at those tools. So we'll go take a look at that. Okay, so here we see, this is my wet tile saw. You'll see it's got like a sliding tray, 7-inch blade right here, and it's got a little pool of water in here, and you fill it up to a certain point, and as the saw goes, it keeps it wet. But I'm going to show you the standard tile cutter first, and then I'll show you why I stick with that saw, right? So let's break this out of the box, do a little movie magic here, and let me show you how this works, right? So the idea here is you've got a little lever and like a little foot to kind of press on things, and you can take a tile. Let's just say we're going to cut it right down the middle. So what we'll do is we will take this tile and lean it up against the front edge of the board here, right? Actually, give me one moment. This is brand new, so just out of the box. And you don't want that on there at all. Okay, what you do is you take your towel and you kind of put it up at the front here, and what you're gonna do is it's got a little like blade like you're cutting glass, and you'll press down on this lever and you're gonna score your tile like that, and it makes basically a groove across the top, right? And then you're gonna come in here and you're gonna lift this up. I'm gonna line that groove back up over the top of this little bump or archway here in the middle of this thing. And the theory is you take this and you can snap the tile. There it goes, all right? And what you get is a pretty clean snap, right? And that works great if you are doing straight cuts, right? If you're just, hey, I need this one piece, and it's not too bad. But if you need to cut like a Pac-Man or some other type of square out of this, then this is where the tile saw, the wet saw, is gonna really kind of come into play. So put that off to the side, and this is so straightforward, I can't even tell you. You basically have a nice straight edge. It's like using a table saw. And if I want to cut this right down the middle, I can line it up right here on the tray, you know, turn it on. And there we go. I've got an equivalent cut. Now, on this one, of course, you're always going to then have to kind of clean it up a little bit. And I will say the blade on my saw is getting a little rough. So if you were to compare these two edges, you'll see the snap is a lot cleaner than the saw. A fresh saw blade would probably solve that problem. But that, you know, if you want a nice clean one, I mean, you can look at those snaps. You know, it's a good way to go. I prefer, honestly, just the table saw, and, you know, most of these edges that I'm cutting are up against the wall. You're never going to see them. They're going to be under a baseboard or something like that. So, so that's kind of the two things. I would definitely get a nice table saw that's got a moving side and a decent blade with some water. And you know, you can go with the snap thing. I've done many floors with that. And it just gets interesting if you have to do corners. So, so with that, let's show you how to kind of lay a little bit of tile. Okay, so let's talk about actually laying some tile here. This all here has been here for about 48 hours, so it's all set. I've already done all this. It's set in place. It's hard. You can walk on it, so no problem there. But what I've got to do is I've got to finish this part of the bathroom. This is where the toilet was. So as we transition from this part of the room into this room, we want to make sure that our tiles are lining up. Now we can continue to use our spacers as we go, and it should work out correctly, but just as a secondary thing, and this is what I want to kind of share with you, is if you use like a laser level or some type of, ruler or some way to kind of mark this, this will help keep our lines lined up correctly and things will look much better. So I'm going to take my laser level over here and I'm going to shoot it down all of these tiles, right, from this end to this end here. And you'll see I'm off a little bit here, and I'm doing okay over here. So I'm going to go over this way and kind of adjust this to just make sure that all of these are lining up the best way that they can. And I'm going to pull some of these little spacers out. Okay, now that's not perfect, but it is pretty good. The human eye probably is not going to pick up on that unless you've got a laser level like my buddy Dave built into his eyeballs. So, okay, so what we've done is we've set up the laser over here and we've kind of lined it down a few of the seams and a few of these tiles along the way. And what that's going to allow us to do is kind of just give us a reference point as we cross over into the next room, right? And I've just kind of dry placed these tiles here so they're not really stuck to the ground. And what we're going to do is we're going to work our way around this side of the room and then kind of circle back around through the bathroom, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of pick up my tiles and space them out. Now, I did go ahead and cut this tile over here, and you'll see it's got kind of a funky, two-way cut. This is a good example of where you're going to want to use that tile saw opposed to the scoring and cracking method, because you're going to need to get these two different angles here, and that's not really easy to do if you use the scoring and cracking method, right? All right, quite a bit more in here. I got my bucket of water next to me. All right, that's what we're gonna do. Let's just take a big glob of this and put it down there, and you'll see the difference in color there a little bit. Doesn't really matter. There's probably a different type of material. Maybe they mixed it at a different time. I think the buckets are the same thing. All right, so I'm gonna put my other spatula in here. I'm gonna put this one in here. And then what I'm gonna do is put the lid back on this guy. Just set it on there. That will keep it from mostly drying out, right? Okay. All right, next thing you do is you're gonna take your tool with the teeth on it, and you're gonna spread the mortar on the ground, wherever you're tiling, so that you get a nice, even spread. And sometimes I just take it and move it around. Now this tile needs to come out. You'll notice I'm hitting that tile with this stuff, so I don't want it to really set up on it, so I'm gonna just wipe it off, okay? So I'm gonna take my teeth and just kind of push this. I'll use the small end to get back into the corners. Now, I make one nice rake, and that gives me the nice groove where I'm gonna lay my next set of tiles. And then I'll just leave my tool sitting right here while I work these, right? So what we do is take this tile, and it's going right here. So we're just gonna kind of place it in here, and then just give it a little drop. And then I wiggle it just a little bit. That'll cause the mortar to kind of stick to the back. Get my spacers here. Take a few of these, put them out like this, make it easy to get to. And we're gonna put some spacers in between this one and the other one. And then I'm gonna push it against those spacers so that this one's right next to that, right? Then we're gonna take our next piece, and we should be able to kind of sneak it in here, right, like that. And I'll take my spacer, you'll see that I got a little bit of the mortar coming up here, and I'm gonna just take this and kind of clean that out. I'll just rub that on the floor, right? This is not like, you know, concrete. You know, it doesn't really burn your hands or give you a chemical burn, generally speaking, but you don't want to keep it on you. It does stick to your skin. And so the other benefit to this towel is you can wipe your hands and other things off as you go, right? Okay, so I've got about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 inch there against that wall. So I could take the straight edge here, and we can sort of check to make sure that these tiles are in line with those tiles. And you'll see I'm putting this right on the groove and down the middle of this, and that is then hitting in the middle of that tile over there. So we know that this is in alignment, so I don't really want to push it back any further. I kind of want to leave it where it's at, right? So what we'll do is we'll prep the next spot here, which is going to be right next to it. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this mortar all the way to the corner here. And it doesn't dry that quick. I mean, you probably get, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, maybe more, to work this stuff, which is more than enough time. You'll see as I kind of work this. All right, and we're gonna put our next tile here, drop it in, give it a little wiggle, and I'm taking my fingers and I'm just pressing it against these two. There are all these leveling systems that you can now buy instead of these spacers, but to be honest with you, you can feel the difference in the tile, and after you have done it for a while, you really kind of get the hang of, you know, how it's gonna kind of work out. And I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 layers here, right? So I'm gonna put just enough here to get one more tile right there. All right. Press that in, just touching all those sides, making sure that everything feels like it's the right height from each other. Put a little bit of space in that one. Put a little space in this one. And you'll notice this one's gonna press against this guy, so that's pushing this way. This is gonna push it over this way, right? And that should keep a appropriate level spacing. So now I'm gonna take these and push these kind of against everybody on all sides. Double check my depth, that feels good. Check my corners, feels good. Looks great. Okay, so that's basically all we're gonna do. You're gonna put the mortar down, and you're just gonna put the tiles up next to the next one where you think you're going, right? So I'm gonna take this one here, drop it in, give it a little wiggle, and just kind of put the spacer in there, just like that. So then we get to the part where we get this one we have to cut out in the wall. And the easy way to do this is to probably measure off of this flat side in and mark that on our tile and make our clean cut there. So we're gonna do that. So got my tape measure here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and measure this. So I'm gonna say that is like 4.5. And I don't wanna go all the way. I don't want to make it super tight, right? So I'm going to make this like 4 1/4, maybe 4 inches. So we'll take our tile, pick the side we want. I like that colored side, right? And so we're going to mark, I'm going to go like 4 1/8. All right, put 2 marks, take my straight edge, mark that with my line, and then I'm gonna just take my saw and I'm gonna cut that. I'll be right back. Okay, so you see I've got my nice cut, and what I do is I take a dry towel, I dry that off, because you don't want to really put down a wet tile. And we'll take this guy and drop him in here, give him a little wiggle, make him stick, and continue our process of putting our spacers in. All right, starting from the side we're working from. That needs to move against the wall a little bit more. Push that back against the spacer. Put our 2 in here, and then push this one against that side. Okay, then we check our depth. Looks good. So we're going to rotate, we're going to come over and do this corner, and then we'll come back, finish up this, and then kind of work our way out. So we've got most of all the tiles cut. So now we just gotta work our way back into here. Okay, so at this point, you saw the video of us working all the tile up to this edge, and really doing tile is just more of the same, right? You're just gonna keep reproducing what you saw earlier in the video and what I did over the last couple of days, right? As you work through your room. And you can either do a section if you get stuck, like let's say you can't back out of an area, you need to go in. You might need to go and do a section and let it set for a few days, and generally you let it set probably for, I would say 24 minimally, maybe 48, 72 hours before you really walk on it and it's really solid. But in my case, I was able to start on that back corner and walk it back this way, and then start from this corner, walk it back this way, and then move from the bathroom and walk out this way. And you saw most of that process. And if you missed it, I put a giant time-lapse video of the whole process up here, so you can go ahead and watch the entire process in a little faster method without all the commentary, and then you'll kind of see how I accomplished this process with the multiple angles, right? But at this point, we want to now talk about the transition from this room, right, the bathroom, to our master bedroom, or master bedroom to the bathroom, how you're looking at it. But that also kind of played into the transition of how I wanted my tiles to go into each one of my closets, and just kind of from a presentation point of view. So when we started this out and we said, hey, we really like these hexagon tiles, they kind of add a lot of character to the room. We started with, you know, laying the tiles right on the edge like this and said, okay, hey, we'll do this and we'll run it out that way. The problem is as we laid them out, they didn't quite end up in the right spacing in the doorways the way I wanted it to. And also when you shut the door and you look at it from the bathroom side, you see a lot of carpet. And that is because this carpet line transitions or goes a little further than these stop gaps on the door frames, right? So what I really wanted to do was kind of cut that line of where the transition is happening in the bathroom, and I want to kind of put it right there on that doorstop. So that's where we're going to make our transition line. That's going to come right here, right down the center. And in doing so, that means if I put this tile here, I'm going to end up with a little block tile right there, and I'm going to end up with a fairly full tile here, right? And I may actually take like maybe, you know, half of what one of these, or a fourth of what one of these tiles is actually for this block, right? And that might be where I make my line. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut out all of my tiles so that I get the right distance of what I want across this thing to lay it out. And then I'm going to pull the metal frame up that's holding the carpet down, peel the carpet back, remove any carpet, you know, tacks or, you know, nails, whatever might be underneath there, pull it up. And then we're going to put a metal like L bracket at the edge, and that is where our tiles are going to butt up against. And then the carpet is going to tuck into that piece. And I'll have some videos here just in a few seconds as we get there, and you'll get to see that, right? So I'll show you that here in just one moment. So let's go ahead and measure out and cut our tiles appropriately, and we're going to dry fit this section just to kind of make it go a little bit more smoothly. So let's go do that now. Okay, so cut took me a minute. So now we're back. I'm just going to again real quickly dry fit these and make sure that they are doing what I expect them to do. I want to make sure that all my cuts look nice and clean. I got a little chip on that one. I cut myself some extras because the saw was acting a little funny in some of its cuts. So I want the straightest possible edge that I can get on this doorway. Okay. Okay. There. Here. Here. Okay. So that's going to be my straight edge there. And now I just have to cut this piece over here, this piece here, and that one there. We are going to be done with this tile job. Get this carpet up. Now, this carpet trim here is just a piece of metal folded over. And the best way to get that up is probably either going to be a flathead screwdriver, or I might be able to do it with my pry bar here. Let's see what happens. And maybe a hammer. And definitely some knee pads. Even though that carpet feels better than the tile, it is still not fun on the knee. All right, so there's our close-up. So I'm just putting the screwdriver under there. I'm just doing a little pry and just bending it back just to take the pressure off the carpet. And that's going to allow me to just kind of pull the carpet up off the tacks that are underneath it. All right. Trying to peel it out here. You'll see, just like that. And you'll see this has the teeth on it, just like our other piece. So again, I'm just going to make sure I've got enough of this pressure off, because I don't want this to pull my carpet in any way. I want to protect my carpet. Okay. I tell you, when I am pulling this, I am kind of pushing it this way, because those teeth point like this, and then the carpet grabs onto it. And that's to kind of keep tension on your carpet. And just so you're aware, when you pull up carpet like this, if you don't stretch it out or keep it nice and taut, it is possible that you will get those bubbles or humps in your carpet. Okay, and you'll see, looks like they've nailed this in here. So I'm going to pry that up off the wood. Looks like there's some of the linoleum still sticking here. I'm going to pull that up, obviously. And then there's some cushion here. And there's no nail tack here on the back side, so I'm definitely going to have to put a little bit of carpet tack there before I can proceed with my tile. So in a previous project, I did some carpet work, and I had these carpet tacks, and what they are, if you've never pulled up your carpet, is they run along the entire edge of your carpet. In this case, that metal piece was the equivalent of this. And if you look real closely, they have these little itty bitty nails or tacks. And these nails are pointing towards the outside wall like this. And then that way, when the carpet lays onto it, it'll grab onto those tacks and hold the carpet there so it doesn't move on you or shift. And so what we're going to do, because when we put the new tile here, we're going to run it right up to the edge of where this wood is. We need to have this carpet edge right here. And so generally speaking, right, we'll cut back the insulation, and we're going to put this about 1/4 of an inch of where the edge of our tiles are going to be. This is going to be my trim. This is just like a standard tile L bracket trim. It's going to be in silver. That's what we decided here for the trim. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure in between these two door stops with my tape measure. I'm going to mark this on this piece, and we're going to hopefully get one nice piece in between those two. Okay, so we finished our tile, and this tile has now been sitting here for about 48 hours. So it is safe to walk on at this point, and you can safely move around it, and we're gonna be good. Now, what you're gonna need to do before we do any grout is you're gonna need to get the right tools and get yourself set up for this. And what I've kind of set myself up for this evening to do this is I've got an empty 5-gallon bucket. I've got myself one of the buckets that I wash out that used to be one of the mortar buckets. So it's, you know, what is that, a 2.5 gallon or something like that. And I've got it filled up with clean water. And because I don't have a helper, but I suggest if you can get a helper that can carry buckets of water for you, absolutely do that. But because I don't have that, you can see it, you can't see off camera, but I've got about 3 more buckets of clean water over that way. The next thing you're gonna need obviously is some grout. We're going with kind of an alpaca color, which is kind of an off-white. You definitely will need a float, a grout float of some type. And this is just kind of a spongy looking float that once you get it on the ground, you can use this to push it around. And for mixing up the thing, I highly, highly suggest a drill and a mixing bit. this will come in and make life a lot easier. Now, if you've never done this before, you might want to start really small, and I'm not kidding on this one, is start small with like a little bucket or a little thing of like a Tupperware container, and this is like a little butter container or a Cool Whip container. And this is how I kind of started out doing things. It's just a little bit at a time, doing like, honestly, 5 or 6 tiles at a time, and just getting used to the consistency and what it looks like and how to clean it up. Because you put it on, you let it sit for a bit, and then you come by with your sponge and you kind of wipe it up. And this will help you kind of understand what the process is without getting it everywhere. Now, I've done this probably a dozen times or more, so I'm going to go ahead and put it all into this 5-gallon bucket and kind of go right at it. Now, before I do that, the next thing that you really want to kind of do before you start is you need to make sure that you kind of check all your tile, check all the grooves, and make sure that you don't have any of that mortar kind of sticking up through the cracks, because 2 things are going to happen. You're going to put this grout down, you're going to kind of push it in, and then if you have like a little tower of mortar in there, what's going to happen next is your sponge is going to get caught on it, or you're just going to grout that little tower into place, and then you're going to have to walk on that for a while and kind of get it out. And once this stuff sets, this is going to set like a really hard stone, and you don't want to really deal with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment and just kind of double check all my lines and grooves, and if I knock stuff loose, I'm going to pull out the shop vac and go ahead and take a good cleaning of the ground before we start all this, and then I'll show you how to mix things. So let's kind of time lapse that real quick, and I'll show you how I kind of clean up and pick up real quick. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I mix this stuff here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open my package and put it into this 5-gallon bucket. And they say to mix it or stir it up for about 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm going to try to mix it up so that it is almost like a peanut butter. Now, this stuff is very fine, right? So I'm going to do my best to keep it as low as I can, because you don't really want to breathe this stuff in. You can get a mask, but it's not going too far here, right? You see it kind of definitely sitting in that bucket. All right, I'm gonna let it kind of settle there for a second. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take our drill, and I've put it on number 1, which is the slower speed, right? 2 is the fast. You don't want to start out that way. You're just gonna make a mess. And what we're going to do is we could dump water in there, and if you're a pro at this, that might be a way to do it. What I was shown by the tile guy, take your sponge and put some water in it, and then squeeze it into your bucket. Now, I did a bag of this the other day, and so I'm going to go ahead and start with 2 sponges worth, and that way it'll kind of control a little bit of what you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and now mix this in here and just start to mix this up. And I'm pressing this to the bottom of the bucket because you always inadvertently get a lot that sits down at that bottom. And what I should end up with is a very kind of creamy looking thing. And so that's still a little dry for me. I'm going to do about a half a sponge, just like that. Now, because this is a fine grout, if I do too much, it's really going to just be runny, which will make it a little tough to work with here, right? And it looks like it's still very powdery, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put some more water in it. And the idea of using the sponge method here, as I was told, is it just allows you the ability to slowly add water and not overdo it. Okay, so it looks like I'm getting to about the point I want to be. All right, so we're getting definitely to a much wetter mixture here. That might have been the right amount of water. I think that's pretty well mixed up. I don't see any more clunky parts, so I'm gonna bring this up, put it on high. All right, then I'm gonna put this in my bucket of water and clean it off. Okay, so you'll see here I've got all the mortar mixed up into the bucket, and unfortunately the video got corrupted when I was filming this part, so I'm just going to voice over this. So right now what I'm doing is I'm starting in the bathroom where the toilet is, and I am just dumping out a small section of the grout that I've mixed up, because I don't want to dump everything out here and put it all in one spot and have to move it across the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and do the toilet area first, and then I'm going to go to the other side of the room and the other corner, and then kind of work my way backwards. And that is because we need to spread the mortar or the grout across the floor, and we need to let it set for a little while. You don't want to like immediately put it down and then wipe it up. But what we are going to do is we're going to spread it across the floor just like you're seeing me do here, and it's going to kind of seep its way into all of the cracks and the grooves in between the tile where we set up our spacers, and that is going to then fill in all of those gaps. Now eventually it will harden like almost like a concrete, and it'll be very solid. What I'm showing here is that with the float, you can use that angle to push the grout into the corners of the, like where the baseboards are. What you really want to do is kind of use it and move it across the floor, and then you can use that to kind of fill in any empty holes. As you move the float across the floor, you want to make sure that you're kind of moving it at like a 45-degree angle, both on the float but also against the lines, meaning you don't want to cross any of the lines directly, because when you do, the float's going to kind of catch itself on the line. So as you kind of pass over each one of your tiles, make sure that your float's at an angle to each line when you cross it. Now, because these are hexagon tiles, it makes it a little tough. You can't just go in like one direction and then the other 90 degrees. You have to kind of go in a couple of different angles and directions, and that's why you'll see me kind of do the circular patterns both to the left and then to the right, and then kind of work it back and forth. And that's because that the tile and the hexagons, the grout lines are, well, they're in every angle. So you'll see here now I've spread it across most all of the floor, and now what I'm doing is I'm pressing down a little harder, and I'm kind of pulling back a lot of the excess off the top. Now there's not that much excess in that back side. I put a lot of it very carefully around the toilet flange, and definitely put some underneath the edge where the baseboards go. But at this point I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit and get a lot of the excess off the top, and then I'll kind of work that way back out through the doorway. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start on the other side. And here you can kind of see I'm doing that like circular motion, and then here I'm pressing really hard down against the tile, and that's just bringing a lot of that excess up. And you don't need to worry about the mess that you made there. We're going to take a sponge and we're going to come back and clean it up here shortly. And there I'm using that 45 edge to get some of that grout in the right spot and just kind of force it underneath, let's say the door jamb or on the frame of the door. So I just kind of bubble up a good piece of it, and then using the float, I'm going to push it down. And yes, I am getting some on the actual door frame there, but this stuff will clean up really well with a wet sponge. So now we're going to go to the other side of the room while we let the toilet room kind of set. And I didn't put out the entire bucket of grout there because it's a lot to manage, and I just didn't want to have to kind of move a whole lot of grout all the way across the entire floor. You'll notice here then I'm going to start taking this, and just like in the toilet room, I'm going to start spreading it around and letting it just kind of seep into all of the cracks in between the tile. And I'm going to go ahead and force it all the way up to the drywall and make sure that I've got everything covered and all of the cracks and seams filled in with the grout. Now here you'll see I'm doing a little bit of a pushing motion, and notice I'm kind of demonstrating it that I'm actually pushing into the grout, right? Meaning I'm getting a little bit underneath my float, and then I'm pushing down into it. And that is because I actually want some of the grout to kind of get pushed or forced down into the actual cracks in between the tile. Don't know if it's necessary, but you know, it's something I've always done when I've done tile, and again, have never really had problems, so I'm just gonna kind of keep doing my same pattern. So now we're going to speed it up and do the time-lapse version, and you'll see I'm going to bring out rest of the grout out of the bucket, and you'll see on the left side is the toilet room and the right side is the part that we just watched. And here I am kind of working my way into the corner, and at this point I've kind of lost my knee pads, and so now I'm just kind of walking on the tile and just kind of spreading the grout. So there you saw me kind of wash off my float, and I'm all done now with the actual moving around the grout, and at this point I'm doing my initial wipe ups, and basically I'm just kind of cleaning the sponge in the bucket and trying to pick up the majority of the mess. Now some time has gone by here, probably about 15 minutes or so, just to let that grout set before I went and started wiping it up. And I'm just going to kind of keep going back and forth over the tile in using I want to say a wet sponge, but kind of a damp sponge, just to kind of keep picking up the grout. So here you see I've got a new bucket. I went ahead and gave the other bucket to my helper, and they went out and washed it out. And then my new bucket, I kind of started with some cleaner water, and I'm just going to go back over all of the tile that I've already done. Probably 5-10 minutes have passed here, and so you'll see that the tile is starting to clean up pretty well. There's still a few spots where you'll see it kind of getting tracked around, but for the most part, it's getting clean. And now I'm actually getting really close towards the end, and I'm actually doing my final clean at this point, and I've switched out the buckets a few times for some pretty clean water. And because this is my final wipe down, at least for the night, I've gone ahead and moved the bucket and everything out of the room, because I'm going to go ahead and do this final wipe. So we're all done with the grout. I'm tired, and it's been a fun day of working. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment below. I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not a professional, but I'm going to do my absolute best to help you out. Hopefully you can get a floor looking as nice as this, or maybe a backsplash, or a tub, or a shower, or whatever it is you're doing. I'll make sure that as I continue on this process, I film as much as I can and share with you. If you'd like to see something special, please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe down there at the bottom. And as always, thank you for watching.